louder than...
We're back.
We're back.
With different hats.
Different hats.
Different hats. This means, backwards hat means philosophical time.
Toque and numb t-shirt. You know what time it is.
Means it's 1 a.m. We're about to get deep.
I'm so glad we do these late at night.
It's the only way to do it, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
So
with the blankie burrito.
To start us off strong. Why do we fear death?
The unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. Next question.
Next question. No, let's talk about this more. So, yes, metaphysical and existential uncertainty is what humans historically fear. And this is definitely a thread that's gone from the very first human being ever to exist, whether that be by evolution or creation.
Whatever you believe.
Whatever you believe. They were a little scared because they didn't know it was coming, and they didn't know how long they were going to last, and they didn't know what their legacy was going to be.
Whoa, here we go.
Here we go. Solon cautions that, and I quote, "It is irrational and ignoble to renounce the acquisition of what we want for fear of losing it. For on this principle a man cannot be gratified by the possession of wealth, honor, or wisdom for fear he may be deprived of them." Translation. It's a little silly. He's saying that it's irrational to not get what we want because we're scared of losing it. Like to not reach for something that we want because either we can't attain it or that we'll lose it or that like
you have to step out of your comfort zone in order to progress.
Exactly. And he says that a man can't be satisfied. He can't be satisfied by the things that he obtains because he has that fear that he may be deprived of them. So, relating this directly back to Alexander, he wants all the things he was collecting and all the material goods he was collecting. It was never good enough for him because he always had the fear that he may be deprived of them. And I think he was able to get a taste of what being deprived of them was after his dad died and he was in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And also his entire childhood, he was always working up to his father. He never was able to get there. And then when he did, for the fear of going back to where he was, he just kept on going further and further and wanting more. So humans seek reassurance of our value, and value acts as a suggestion. Whoa, why did I write this? Value acts as a suggested solution to this void.
Holy cow.
Whoa.
You okay?
No. The void I'm referring to is that, like, insecurity.
Okay.
Like
the internal void.
The internal void and the fear of death.
You know, casually.
So he would want these things, even though it doesn't make sense to fill a metaphorical void with actual tangible objects. It's like how today we buy things just to get a little bit of serotonin.
Well, it's the instant gratification, which is why we are like, I missed my bus. I deserve a $10 Starbucks. Guilty. Today twice. I didn't miss my bus.
I just needed it. Yeah. So there's a Greek word called kleos, which is beautiful sounding, and it means everlasting fame. So Alexander's attempt to achieve kleos, I propose, it caused toxic productivity, which toxic productivity is a more modern term. It refers to, it stems from the age of social media and seeing everyone being so productive and successful in life, and you're toxically productive because nothing's ever good enough. Like, there's always going to be someone who's better than you, and it's much easier to see that as a person nowadays with social media and the internet and sheer, like, knowledge and education. But even in antiquity, at any point in history, I think you can be toxically productive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Alexander saw his father and he was toxically productive, trying to better himself and be better and do better, and nothing was ever good enough. And this put him on a hedonic treadmill. A hedonic treadmill is a theory, which is the idea of kind of like a a hamster in a wheel. So it's a repeated return back to a baseline level of happiness. So we have our baseline level, and regardless of what achievement, like they're always going to cycle back down to that base level of happiness, no matter how good the things are, what's considered a success in somebody's life, but you'll always return back to that baseline, no matter what. So another Solon quote is that no man is happy until he's dead. And that can be taken two ways. It can be taken that no man's happy until he's dead because then he's not living. So it's like he's at peace. Or how I am interpreting it is that no man is happy until he's dead because then his cycle stops. Like then we can actually assess the timeline of like, okay, we have a stop period. Now we can assess the timeline of like, was he happy or not? Because it's not continuing anymore.
Plus, in terms of like history and how we look back on things, like your legacy doesn't start until you're dead.
Yeah.
So you were like Alexander, his dad even, they were never gonna fully achieve it until they died because hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
And so you're never gonna, if you can never achieve your goal until you're dead, well, you're never gonna be happy. Dang.
So this all links back to the very Greek and very ancient concept of heroism and heroes, epic heroes and poems. Because heroism then is a very ambiguous term. Yeah. It could be taken so many ways because in my brain, heroism is a commitment to a noble purpose or something deemed as noble, emphasis on deemed, like who decides what's valuable, like what's deemed as noble. Yeah. So, like, that can change completely based on bias, culture, context, everything. So, like, the only person who can dictate one's own path and heroism and value is themselves. So that just reiterates the toxicity of it.
Yeah, because if you never find yourself valuable because you're constantly comparing yourself to your dad, then, like, you're never going to be a hero. You're never going to be your little Iliad in a box.
Only the fans know. Go back to last episode.
Sorry.
But yeah, you already started off my Alexander points. He was attempting to outprove his father, and he was trying to outprove his father's legacy, live up to what he thought he should be. And when I think Alexander became a role model for others. Just in, like, he was so successful in what he did. Was it right? Maybe not, but
he's called the Great for a reason.
Yeah, like, what he did was great, whether it was righteous or not. It was such a large feat.
On a scale.
Yeah.
Like, it was huge.
Yeah, so he became, in my brain, an icon. Like, he became an ancient influencer.
Girl boss.
A girl boss.
Slay.
He was girl bossing away in antiquity. And there's this other theory. Theory, is that the word? There's this term utilized called personality cult. Okay. And it's typically utilized. The sources that I was using was for World War II. And it's typically around, like, the Nazis. And it also, the specific one I was looking at talked about Stalin and the personality cult.
Sorry, how did I know you were going to talk about Nazis when I talked about it in the last episode? Sorry.
Your mind reader. Telekinesis to me taking notes.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, so Stalin.
Yeah, so it's not anything about Stalin, but I'm just saying the source material comes from Stalin, and I was reading it, and it doesn't directly link it back to antiquity, but I think the theory still reigns relevant. But it's pretty much that societies which are founded on the principle of the overall good, with a singular person personifying these ideas. So it's one guy. It's divine kingship.
Yeah,
is what it is. Literally
right of divine kings is
so
you were chosen.
It's one person personifies what the Macedonians should have been. So that's Alexander.
Yeah.
So he became the icon of like, this is what the new he was the new face of Macedon.
Yeah.
So he became a personality cult, like celebrity personality.
Whoa, he's a celeb.
He's a celeb for real. And so people are seeing this and seeing him and seeing how influential he was. Like in the Hercules movie, like, put my face on every vase. Like,
yeah.
He was a celeb. Just like the gods were to the Greeks.
Divine right of kings, he also was a god.
Yeah, demigod.
Demi.
Not all the way. But so, like, what all this has to do, personality cult with everything, is that I question whether, we already kind of touched on it last episode about whether or not the ancient Macedonians would have accepted his crimes, but I think the fact that he formed a personality cult made his crimes dismissible.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was such an iconic figure, and he was this person that everyone looked up to. So they theoretically could have thought, like, oh, but it's Alexander, though. Like, Alexander did it, so that makes it okay.
Yeah, and it's not like necessarily they are gonna go do the same things, but I think it's also an element of, like, he was like, no, I'm doing this so that we're no longer in debt because we are now in further debt from the war.
Yeah.
So we have to take these things.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if I don't take these things and I don't take these people, then we have nothing to show for it. Why did your husband go to war and die?
Yeah.
You want me to bring something back, don't you?
Mm-hmm. So the influences that their art could have had possibly could have been almost like you talked about remembrance of the time in the last episode in a bad light, but it could have also been like memorial, like, at least in Macedonia, like they're including all the stuff in this artwork because they're like, yes, appreciation, but also like, we did that.
Yeah, well, we have war memorials now, and
mm-hmm.
you know, like, we live in Guelph, so there's like big memorial and things about John McCrae. I don't know his title. Sergeant? Sorry.
I don't even know what he did, so...
He wrote In Flanders Fields. He was a soldier.
Oh, in Flanders Field, where poppies grow.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, from our point of view, like, he is our hero.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he and everyone else from the city that went and fought in the war, they did that. And so we're gonna look at that memorial and be like, wow, like, what an amazing feat, like, what an inspiring person. But maybe the people he fought, they're going to be like, you fought against my people.
Yeah.
So it's like the thing with, like, a memorial is it's a double-edged sword. There's always going to be a losing side. And I think that his, like, artwork and things like that is, like, really just proves that.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, and I really wish we could go back in time and ask them what they thought of it.
Yeah, and the attainment of these objects, I feel like they were, like, because they were gaining something out of it, they were likely more able to accept the war, conflict, and crime of it. And it made mass suffering serve a higher good.
Yeah. It's the idea of utilitarianism, essentially.
It was the growth of the Macedonian Empire, the growth of their wealth, the expansion of their own culture, borrowing and stealing iconography and style. Again, when does a comet become a meteor?
Yeah.
Like, I think it was just a comet to them.
Whoa.
I think it just remained a comet, at least in the Macedonian sphere.
Yeah. Well, a comet or a meteor, when it's traveling at you, is a meteor. When it's traveling away from you, it's a comet.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
It's all about perception.
Yeah.
Wow. Glass half full.
Yeah.
Whoa. That was good. But yeah, I had written here, pieces of art hold a legacy of their own. And getting into the hands of Alexander and Macedonian expansion not only changes the legacy of Alexander, but changes the legacy of the objects themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Like you were saying about the memorial of
John McCrae,
Flanders Fields, poppies grow, row by row. So what? That's a bad example.
Well, I forgot what I was gonna say. I didn't scratch it down.
Oh no.
What was the last point you said? Hold on.
I was saying that Macedonia expansion not only changes the legacy of Alexander, but the objects themselves.
Right. What I was gonna say, well, you figure out what you were gonna say, is that, like, it's almost like, depending on what you use it for and depending on the circumstances you got it, like a vase is a vase until you put it in a grave. Then it's a grave good. Yes. And then it means something different. Mm-hmm. A vase is a vase if you just have it in your home until you steal it from war, like, doing a terrible war. Now it is a war loot. Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. So, like, yeah, the idea of legacy is, like, and perspective in things is meanings change. And I think that what's really special and what's really interesting too is we get to try to look at both sides, mm-hmm. which is interesting. As
soon as you started talking, my thought came back to me.
Yes.
And you said my thought, but better.
Really?
You worded it better than me.
I'm so happy. For once.
For once.
I did it better.
Yeah, so the paths and histories of these objects and ideas were completely altered forever. And I love the vase is a vase analogy.
Thank you.
Because like we were talking before about how they're like, we're so cultured and like appreciation of art, but a vase is a vase until it's loot, and then a loot is loot until it's a flex.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It becomes an object of...
a meteor.
Yeah, it becomes a meteor. It snowballs. So loot is loot until it's in your house, and then it's a vase again. But that vase is from India.
Yeah. Like, and you didn't get it ethically. You didn't pay someone for it. You didn't, like, learn about how it was made by the maker. You're just like, this is mine now.
Yeah, and then you can say when people come over for dinner parties, like, oh, it's from India.
But you're never going to tell them how you actually got your hands on it, which is probably why we don't have any sources.
Exactly, and also, I don't think whoever's owning it wants to know how it got here. They're just happy they have it.
Yeah. That's like, have you seen, like, the uranium glass at thrift stores? It glows bright green. It's toxic, and people still want to buy it because they want to ignore that it's toxic.
Whoa.
It's crazy. Look it up later.
Noted. Noted for the notes. So I guess, like, it all just becomes a question of ethics. Because we, right now, very rightfully so, are reassessing our understanding of repatriation, and which means, like, giving back and like kind of doing right what we did wrong, mm-hmm. by giving back material goods to the people who it belongs to and where objects should be homed.
Basically, no more British Museum.
Yeah, no more British museums.
Back where it came from.
No more museums, period. Like,
yeah, unless
it's a local, like, especially so Indigenous art in Canada, mm-hmm. is a prime example.
Yeah,
because the issue is we value objects differently than other places and cultures and people do. So there are, don't quote me 100% on this because I don't know the exact names, but there's these sculptures which are of war gods, and the whole thing is that if they move, like if you move that sculpture after it's created, like no longer is the land protected.
And this is in Indigenous art?
Yeah, this is Indigenous art in Canada. And so there are museums in Canada which have war god sculptures. So would the people who have stolen these things know what they are? No. Does that make it right? No. Not at all. But so that's where repatriation comes in, where it's like we need to get these things back. But then the question is it already too late? Like,
yeah.
So in regards to antiquity and Alexander, like, what were they stealing that perhaps shouldn't have been? Like, would Alexander's changes have been too far gone already when, after things he's stolen? Like, this is completely theoretical. But the things he's stolen, I empathize for the people who got stolen from, even though the objects look very mundane to us. Like, what did that mean to them?
To me, like, the objects that we, especially the ones that we looked at, like, those represent human life.
Yeah.
And those represent the human experience. And that is something, like, the human experience is such a universal experience, but that doesn't make it any less special.
Yeah.
So the idea of, like, it would be like if I came in and I was like, I'm going to steal I'm taking your beautiful world map. I'm going to take that. And also, I'm going to take your paintings. And I'm going to take your Squishmallow. No. And those, like, to someone else, like, are just so, like, oh, well, find the map again. Get that painting again. Rebuy the Squishmallow. But that's not what it means. Mm-hmm. Is it's all the memories that you have attached to it. And that kind of thing. And I think that that's priceless.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of just taking that from someone is, like, terrible.
Yeah.
Like, there's, like, things that I, like, could think of that if someone took that from me, or it's like, what would you save in a fire?
Yeah.
If I lost some of the things that I have in a fire, or someone took them, I don't think I'd be okay.
Yeah.
Like, because it just holds so much priceless value, and, like, we don't fully know what the vases were for. But maybe Grandma gave that to you.
Mm-hmm.
And now Grandma's unfortunately passed away. And that is all you have left. And then some guy comes in and is like, I'm going to take your mother, I'm going to take your grandma's vase, and I'm also going to take all your money, and I killed your dad.
Whoa.
Like, what?
Yeah.
So I think, like, that's why it's like, I just went on such a little, like, spiel.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Good.
Because with that philosophy, that perspective in mind, it makes it even sadder. We talked about it last episode, but how the ancient sources don't acknowledge the materiality of loot.
Yeah.
They only value the money and the gold.
Well,
and
yeah, sorry.
So it's upsetting just to, like, think about it that way, and how much these objects and material really affects our everyday lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
And how just the historians completely dismissed it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, thinking of the stories that these items had, and, like, thinking of their meaning, I think it really, like, draws back to the very first episode where we're like, you need to understand Alexander's upbringing. You need to understand him as a person.
Yeah.
Who was dynamic and had motives and feelings and thoughts and traumas. And it's like, well, now you need to take that and you need to see what he did. And you also need to put a perspective on the people who are not named.
Yeah.
And,
like, of the equivalent of $77 trillion worth of billion, it's trillion now in my brain.
Well, he also had the 3 centuries worth of coins,
True.
so probably.
But with the sheer mass amount of wealth he gained, like, imagine each and every object in that is somebody's annotated Iliad.
Yeah, it is somebody's special box.
It's somebody's special box, and that's so upsetting to think about.
Like, when I was saying the thing about, like, if I lost something, I immediately thought of this Build-A-Bear I got when I was 16 years old from my sister. It's just a Build-A-Bear. It's just a Spider-Man bear, and his name is Parker. But he is so precious to me that I would save him in a fire before I saved my laptop.
Wow.
Like, I'll get another laptop. I will never get, like, the experience of my sister being like, I went to Build-A-Bear and I picked out a Spider-Man bear and I thought to name him Parker instead of Peter because everyone's going to name it Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. I don't have anything on my laptop. I use Google Drive.
Thank you, Cloud. And today's sponsors.
Oh my god, imagine. But yeah, I think it's just, you have to think of the human experience, and you have to think of, like, really push to focus on what we, like, don't know and what we don't hear about.
Mm-hmm. And I had written down before that, I had also asked the question, would the ancients have felt the same way that we feel today about these changes being made and material objects being stolen?
I think it depends on, like, it brings in the idea of perspective again. I feel like I'm in, like, an interview. Alexander's here.
Yeah, Alexander's back.
I think it depends on, like, the perspective again, where it's like, if you are a Macedonian and you're like, whoa, suddenly we have so much wealth, we have, like, this influx of culture, we have this influx of objects, like, you know, we also have glory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we did that. We're kind of the underdogs. Like, that, this is awesome. This is amazing. What a huge win. But then you're you're someone in India, you're someone in, like, Asia, Persia, and you're like, I just got my whole life taken from me.
Yeah.
And now I have to rebuild, and I have to struggle through the traumas of rebuilding something like that.
Yeah, and even, I don't think materiality loses its value, whether, like, no matter how rich Alexander got, his Iliad is always still his Iliad. Like, his value upon materiality doesn't diminish because he has more. So, I think that the ancients would have definitely felt the way you feel about Parker, about whatever their item was.
Yeah.
Because, it, like you said, it just holds such value to that person, whether we can distinguish it or not.
Yeah, and I think something that's very, like, compelling is putting that, like, human aspect on it. Like, I remember I saw the Pompeii exhibit when it was at the ROM. First of all, most incredible thing I've ever seen. The one thing I remember from that exhibit, there was, like, so many, like, casts and things, and they were so terrible and so sad. The one thing I remember, like, specifically is staring at a half-eaten loaf of bread. Because there were people eating, and then something, like, terrible happened, and they were gone. But their bread was still there, and they had bites taken out of it. And you see that, and you're like, oh my god, this is not just a textbook. Like, this was a real thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, seeing, like, oh, here's this thing from Greece that made it to India. How crazy. Well, you have to think, how did it make it there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like, it really makes you kind of, like, question a lot of things.
Can send you into a spiral real quick.
A little bit. I'm going to have an interesting sleep.
Yeah, well, to continue the spiral.
Yes, please.
I don't know why. Hopefully you get something out of this quote. Here's me bringing in more modern media. BoJack Horseman, the TV show.
Oh, gosh.
That is a spiral.
Never seen it. I will never watch it for that reason.
I watched all of it. Let me tell you, this past December is the saddest December I've ever had.
I think it ruined my life.
Yeah.
Hit me with it.
So in an episode of BoJack Horseman, a character says, everything must come to an end. The drip finally stops. So I just got chills because I, like, remember that episode. It's so if you watch anything, watch that one. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But so the concept is that BoJack Horseman, in the beginning of, like, this big monologue, it's an episode about his death. He says something along the lines of, like, I feel like I was born with a crack in me, or, like, I feel like I was born with a leak.
Mm-hmm.
And then very poetically at the end, a character says to him, everything must come to an end. The drip finally stops. So the leak. Oh my god, I have chills.
I might cry.
So this drip is completely dependent on the receiver of the drip. Like, how do you perceive the drip?
Do you want to know how you go.
I perceive it as a drip of ambition, confidence, success, happiness, existentialism. Like, I think the drip is everything that makes you you. And if you don't have a drip, then the drip is like your uncertainty. Like, every little piece you lose, the more uncertain you get. And the older you get, you think the older you get, the wiser you get, but the older you get, you just have more questions. Mm-hmm. So I kind of see it in that way.
Well,
what do you see?
You're almost like a half empty, and I'm kind of a half full, because I see it as not necessarily the end of life, but an end of an era. Oh. Where it's the drip finally stops, as in, like, maybe it's your depression, your anxieties. Maybe it's, like, this one thing you've been worrying about. That will end, and you will move past it. And that just means that door is kind of closed. And maybe that, like, maybe I'm just resonating with it because it's, like, very relevant to get personal. That's very relevant to, like, what I've gone through is, like, you have finally closed that door. The drip is done. Mm-hmm. And now you can start to fill up again. You put flex tape on it.
Duct tape fixes everything.
Yeah. And, like, now you can finally start to feel full again and whole and... Mm-hmm. Like, so and then you can be ambitious and you can be courageous and things.
That's crazy, because that would be two fully different analyses of Alexander.
Yeah.
As a person.
That's like, do we feel bad for him still, or do we think he's a bad guy?
I personally feel bad for him.
I feel bad for what life made him become. Yeah. Because I don't think he had to do that.
He did not have to do that at all.
And to think of a 4-year-old boy being told, like, you will never amount to anything unless you, like, attempt to, like, conquer the world. And for him to just be, like, growing up being like, I just really want to be, like, knowledgeable and... like, almost thinking of, like, his... how we were talking about in episode 2, like, with, like, well, what if the things that he was taking, he was actually collecting? Mm-hmm. Which, he was doing it on a ridiculously grand scale. Didn't need to do that. But that's also due to his upbringing. He was told he has to do things on a grand scale. But what if that was just the little boy in him that was, like, I just want to learn, and I, like... have gone to all these places and my dad won't be able to see it, and so I just want to collect all these things so I can remember, like, my dad and, like, what I've done for him and for his name, because at the end of the day it's his... we can't talk about Alexander without talking about Philip, so at the end of the day it's kind of his name too. Yeah. Wow. I'm like,
You're on some philosophical...
I'm kind of on a different level.
You're on a different level, and I'm not there.
I love philosophy.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. I took an ancient Greek philosophy class, and, like, ancient Greek philosophy is... you can describe it as being extremely selfish, in the sense of a lot of the philosophers were like, this is your 10-step guide on how you can be happy. I don't give a dang flabbit about anybody else, and you shouldn't either. And there was actually this one, it was Epicurus. He said that you shouldn't fear death, because when death exists, you do not, and when you exist, death does not. Are you writing that down?
No. You made me think of another BoJack Horseman quote.
Amazing. So it's like, it's very interesting that it's like, and he was cool. I loved Epicurus. He was like, saying that you shouldn't fear the gods because they don't actually have a say in what we do, and they exist, but they don't take part in human lives, which that was a very, like, controversial opinion. Not many people thought of that, but it's just this idea of, like, selfishness and making yourself happy, and I think that, like, part of Alexander was like, what can I do to make myself feel full? What?
Okay, his name's Mr. Cuddly Whiskers.
It's not fitting the vibe, Mr. Cuddly Whiskers.
I'm sorry, but it's important. Okay, because Mr. Cuddly Whiskers talks about happiness, and he says, sometimes you need to take responsibility for your own happiness. I'm happy for the first time in my life, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. It takes a long time to realize how truly miserable you are, and even longer to see that it doesn't have to be that way. Only after you give up everything can you find a way to be happy.
Yep.
That just summarized what we just said, but not really. Anyways.
No, I'm saying yep as in, like, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I think that if you decide to have, like, children, you're really only responsible for yourself unless you have to take care of someone else for certain obligations, you know?
Yeah.
But you are only in charge of your own happiness and, like, making sure that you are, like, fed and rested and hydrated and happy. And that's kind of it. So it's, like, it's very interesting if you were to, like, take this, like, man who we were kind of flip-flopping on of, like, you kind of suck, dude. Like, you're kind of a massive jerk. And then you think, like, there's a lot of things that we do to kind of heal our inner child. I would say that's a very new concept in mental health and things.
Absolutely.
But if you think of it, it's like his curiosity, his, like, true desire was to just learn. So if you see him as he's healing his inner child, that really, like, did he have to do it on such a destructive level? Absolutely not. Just, like, go, like, buy a little toy. But also, he was really troubled, obviously.
You just, like, mic drop. Like, I don't even know what to say to that.
Sorry.
No, that was
apparently this is kind of my episode.
Welcome to the Lexi podcast.
Welcome to the Lexi show.
Wow. Now, like, I keep on questioning the materiality of it. Like, what? Like, I know greed, and I know greed, and I know the need to, I know his dad literally told him to use power to take what you want. But, like, I just, like, I can't fathom, like, needing to literally collect so many things. And I know legacy's so important, and I know no man is happy till he's dead. So, like, you have to, like, have this huge mass of stuff to, when you die, then people be like, wow, he mattered because he had so many things. But I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I think I do. The less philosophical answer, like, the less practical answer, or the more practical answer is items equal wealth. He had to take their wealth, otherwise they would still have some sort of, they would not be indebted to Macedonia. So we had to take their wealth. Taking their wealth meant taking their things. But if you think of it as a philosophical thing, because why not? He was taking their humanity.
Yeah.
He, like, if we, like, have established that, like, material things are just, like, capsules of humanness, then he was taking that from them. And just further, here we go. By taking away their humanity, he's just further enforcing their position as foreign people who don't matter. Which is not true. They do matter. But to Macedonians, you need to, in order to, like, well, to kind of anyone who takes over people on that scale, you kind of have to think of them as non-human. And, like, you can see that with the Crusades, which is really interesting, is they were like, look at these people that you need to turn Christian. They look like monsters. They're not human. So if like a human is characterized by having things that hold memories, then you take that away, they're no longer human.
Yeah.
They're just animals because humans are a species.
And that is criminal.
Yeah, you're stealing someone's, like, you're effectively, like, you're basically stripping them down to nothing and murdering them without, like, it's a jail sentence. It's like death penalty or, like, life in jail. He put them in life in jail.
He said
when
all
he's
above,
the one that should have been there.
Yeah. Wow. Like, I don't even know if we can deconstruct it more than that. I mean, even if we attempt to address the art history of it, like, I feel like the art history is a dismissible crime. It's the legacy of Alexander, which is, in my brain, the largest crime in itself.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of like almost like for a long time it was like if you were to think of it as like you're a prosecutor, I guess, it's like a bunch of petty crimes. Yeah. You know, you steal a little bit here, you take a little bit there, but then it's like once you like really break it down and you're like, because I want to roll with the idea. I am choosing to roll with the idea that it's like essentially stripping them of humanity. That's terrible. And that is like the biggest thing. And if stealing art means that, then like it's not about the art. Obviously it held value, but like did it hold that much value if they didn't like we don't have them buried with it?
Yeah.
Like if it held that much value to them, they would still have it. You know, we have so much from other things. We don't have any of that. So like it's not about the art, it's what it meant. Whoa. Mic freaking drop.
I have one last BoJack Horseman quote.
Oh, please do.
This one's not as, like, kaboom to the heart, but it kind of summarizes the entirety of this limited series.
Oh, it's been a fun one.
It's been a fun one.
This is the first one, too. It's really
the first of potentially many.
Yeah, this has been amazing.
Really has, but Wanda Pierce in BoJack Horseman says, when you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags.
Whoa! Now that's the true mic drop.
That's the true mic drop. Just think on that, audience.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna say anything about that.
No, we should end there. I'll repeat that one more time for y'all. Nice and close so you can hear me good. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags.